Hello everyone, this Election Watch Analysis here again for another video. Today I'll be discussing Senator Roy Blunt's recent announcement that he will not run for re-election, and it's pretty interesting, and I think specifically I'll be discussing this topic, but also the large amount of GOP senators that are retiring. So 5 so far, and none for the Democratic Party, which definitely puts the Democratic Party at an advancement. So I'll discuss this, of course, more specifically. But getting into Roy Blunt in his state, Missouri. Okay, so Roy Blunt announced that he will not run for re-election. He is the number 4 Republican in the Senate, chair of the Senate Policy Committee, or Republican Policy Committee. So it does not sound very glamorous, but it's actually a pretty high position. So going to his home state of Missouri, which I'll find now, it's a pretty red state. It is not very likely to flip. I didn't think it would flip anyway. Though, an interesting fact is that Roy Blunt actually nearly lost in 2016. So whenever I mentioned Missouri, I have to mention Democrats, I always mention Jason Kander, and I'm sure a lot of other people do that. Jason Kander is the Missouri Secretary of State. He's a Democrat, and he nearly won against Roy Blunt in 2016. He came within 2.8%. In a state that Hillary Clinton lost by such a margin, he narrowly lost. So he's not running, he declined, and I think that I'm not quite sure if he would be able to win. I mean, if Roy Blunt is retiring, the thing is that you have to weigh at a certain point, would him retiring have helped the GOP or made it worse? For example, Jason Kander ran on like a kind of outsider message that may have helped him, and since Roy Blunt was so high up there in the Republican Party. So that probably helped him, but running against a candidate that is more well-liked by the voters of Missouri, that really could have lowered the Democrats' chances. So, of course, there are about 3 Democrats that really could have won this. Nicole Galloway, the Missouri State Auditor and last Democratic elected official in the state, who ran for governor in 2020 and lost by double digits. I mentioned Jason Kander, and Claire McCaskill is the former senator who lost in 2018 to Josh Hawley. I forgot his name for a second, but I'm sure you've heard him in the news. So Jason Kander, I'm going to quickly point out this. With a margin of 4.1%, a margin of error, Roy Blunt was only beating Jason Kander by 1% in a hypothetical poll. And that was done pretty recently, just about 2 months ago. So he was looking decently vulnerable. And I think and I'm actually not surprised that he retired. I thought that maybe I think I put him around like Rob Portman retiring, which I was surprised by. Probably I was less surprised by this. For example, I think that he was less likely than Ron Johnson, the senator from Wisconsin, to retire, but he was more likely than Rob Portman. But of course, it happened. He retired. So in the state of Missouri, it's not a very likely state to flip to the Democrats, especially with all the best candidates declining to run, and only Scott Sifton, who's a state senator, deciding to run so far. And of course, there are also some former statewide elected officials that I assume were term limited, since they all served from 2009 to 2017, and Quentin Lucas, the mayor of Kansas City. But all of them are likely to lose pretty heavily, and I don't know how popular they were. For example, Nicole Galloway was running against a decently unknown candidate. He was lieutenant governor, and who rose to the position after Eric Greitens, the governor of Missouri, resigned due to scandals. She looked like she could win. I mean, I mean Nicole Galloway by this. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear about that. She was the only statewide elected Democrat left, and she still lost by about double digits. I'm not quite sure what the margin was. I want to say like 16%. I'll check now. It was 17%, or actually no, it was 16.4% more specifically. Though, speaking of Eric Greitens, the former governor, he's actually been in the media. He's been saying he's quite likely that he will run for he'll run in the Republican primary, but he'd be a pretty bad candidate. I think if there was a strong candidate like Jason Kander, they would win, just because Greitens retired because of scandals, and I think he'd actually be worse for the Republican Party overall. He would not help them. I'm not sure if Scott Sifton, the only Democrat to have announced, is a strong candidate. I'm not quite sure about that. And there has been some hypothetical polling, and it just was a Roy Blunt and Eric Greitens, which showed Roy Blunt winning. So going to the larger repercussions of this decision, as you can see, as I mentioned before, 5 Republicans are retiring and no Democrats are retiring. The thing is that about 3 of these seats, 3 of the 5, are swing states. One is a potential swing state, and I mean Missouri by that, and one is, of course, safe, right? No matter who wins, unless it was Roy Moore, for example, and that is Alabama. So Ohio, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, and those are Senators Rob Portman, who I mentioned earlier, Pat Toomey, who actually voted to convict Trump, which I think that would actually get him likely primaried and ousted if he actually ran again, and Richard Burr, who also voted to convict Donald Trump. And by those two, I mean in his second trial. So these 5 states, Ohio, I think it actually helped the Democrats since Rob Portman won by about 20% in 2016 against Ted Strickland, the former governor. It's a very large margin for a state that went to Donald Trump by about 8% even. He outperformed Donald Trump by about 12%. It's a decently large margin. Pat Toomey won very narrowly in Pennsylvania in 2016, so I'm not quite sure if his retirement helped or not, just because of the fact that Pennsylvania is always going to be a swing state. North Carolina, though, Richard Burr won by about 5% in 2016. 5%. Donald Trump won by about 2%, I believe, 2-3%, but Richard Burr outperformed him by a lot. So I think in North Carolina and Ohio, it definitely helps Democrats. Missouri, it's probably not going to, and Pennsylvania is undecided. Alabama, no effect at all. And as you can see, I have about 7 states that some states are listed as swing states, and including the states that I have as retiring, I'd put the other 3 states, which brings it to 10 swing states. And open seats, I think, are actually, they may not be a big effect if the incumbent is running or not. Of course, the factor of incumbency is mentioned a lot in by political analysts. I apologize, I'm stuttering today. But what it really means is that there might be voters that just vote for the same person as they voted for last time, and it could help them. But I don't think it helps people that much. I mean, if you look at recent results in 2020, Cory Gardner was the Republican senator in Colorado, a state that went 13% for Joe Biden. He lost by about 9% to John Hickenlooper, the popular former governor. I think that if Cory Gardner had been running in an open seat, he would have lost by more. But there were still people who preferred him. The reason they voted for him, I guess, in the last election, which was 2014, may have been the same reason they voted for him again. I'm not quite sure that. Then again, 2014 was a red wave year, and I'm not quite sure the margin that Cory Gardner won by. So sometimes it doesn't really matter. It just really depends. Like, for example, Rob Portman was probably going to win because his term in the Senate was well liked by his record. I mean, more specifically, is well liked by Republicans and I guess all voters actually in Ohio. Though Pat Toomey would probably his record would be a liability just because a lot of the pro-Trump Republicans might not like him or definitely would not like him for the fact that he voted to convict the former president. In North Carolina, of course, I'm not going to go on for this too much longer. North Carolina, Richard Burr voted to convict, so that would definitely not help him with Trump voters, but he still won by a large margin in 2016. So his record is probably liked by the voters in North Carolina. Therefore, that means that he would probably do better. In reality, it's not super complicated as it might seem. In reality, it's just really how people's voters or senators or the candidates' records appeal to voters. So that's what I mean more specifically. So Democrats can flip these seats that candidates are retiring in. That brings them to 59. They only need to win one of the swing states left. I mean, for example, Nevada and Arizona look like they're going to be like 2% in Arizona, maybe like even larger in Nevada. And they could definitely win there. And of course, that gives them the 51, so they don't even have to have Kamala Harris be tiebreaker. In Georgia, it appears that Raphael Warnock is positioned to win so far. And in New Hampshire, Kristen Nunu has not announced that he's running yet. But if he does, I think that Maggie Hassan might lose. So I don't know if I'd characterize that yet. But also, they do look like they could win in Wisconsin. That would bring them to 53. Of course, I'm going a little too much into a best case scenario for the Democrats, and I'm really not sure if they will pull off a victory. And I will have a Senate elections as of this day video coming out just showing my position on these seats so far. So if you want to see that, you can subscribe and hit the notification bell. But that's it, everyone. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you like the video, and like the video to give it a thumbs up as well. It helps with the algorithm. Please leave a comment down below talking about your thoughts. Give me your feedback, suggestions. What do you think about this particular topic? Do retirements help the GOP, or will they not? What is your opinion? I want to hear that. Join the Discord in the description, and that should be it. So I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.